Shalom, you are listening to Rabbi Jeremy Beaton. Today I want to talk to you about the formula to enter the kingdom of heaven. There is a formula, many of you don't know it maybe, but today I'm going to give you understanding about the formula and also the key to the formula. If you don't have the key, the formula is useless. So first let me start off with Proverbs chapter 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, sovereign of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice and judgment and equity, to giving insight to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase in learning, and a man of understanding shall attain to wise counsels. To understand the proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So, the question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to despise knowledge and instruction? Or are you going to listen and be wise? So, just a little background to how I came back to the Torah. 2010, I broke up with my partner. We'd been together for 25 years. And at that time, obviously, I was feeling low and depressed. And I called out to the Father. And I said to the Father, I said, what do you want from me, Father? I said, show me, tell me, teach me, show me, and I will do it. So with that said, 2 weeks later, the Father put his Spirit upon me in front of two people. They witnessed this, two friends of mine. For 4.5 hours, I was consumed with a set-apart spirit. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I was crying tears of joy, and there was a big smile on my face. But this lasted for 4.5 hours. And I knew that this was coming from the heavens. So after this had passed, another couple of weeks, I started searching on the internet. Because I knew this was from the heavens, the set-apart spirit. I didn't know it was a set-apart spirit then, but I knew it was coming from the heavens. I knew it was a heavenly source, a heavenly power, to make me feel the way I did. All my pain had gone. I mean, I was suffering at the time. My teeth were falling out. I had gut pain because I was drinking too much. I mean, I was killed over with pain. It was that bad. But once the Spirit came upon me, all the pain had gone. It'd been lifted. I was healed. So then I started searching. 2 weeks later, I came upon many teachers or many people speaking about black people are the real Jews. So it was then I got my Bible out and I started to reference and read what they were saying. And I followed and followed and followed and followed various teachers, and started understanding that the Sabbath was very important to God. So then I started to try and keep the Sabbath. I didn't know how exactly, but I knew obviously we were not to work. And I wasn't working at the time anyway, so it was great. So I could just, stay in and read scripture. So as time went on, I came across a teacher called Rabbi Simon Altaf. Now, when I heard this man speak, to me, it was as if a light bulb had come on. And I knew that this was the person that Abba Yahweh wanted me to listen to or to be my teacher. So I listened, and I listened, and I listened. to all of his lectures, all of his teachings, everything that the man had put out there on the internet, I listened to constantly, over and over and over again. I mean, I would say I was listening for at least about a month to take in all the knowledge that he was giving, to try and understand it within my own head, within my own heart. And then after about a month, I decided, yeah, okay, it's time. I'm going to get in contact with him. Because I was assessing him. I wanted to find out exactly where he was coming from and what his story was. So I was, at that point, decided, yeah, this is where I need to be. This is the man I want to teach me. So then I got in contact, we spoke, and he told me the 2 books I need to get. One is the Hidden Truth He Breaks Scrolls, and one is the Siddur. If you go back to the beginning of the teaching, you will see the 2 books advertised there. You can buy them from Amazon. Anyway, I wasn't working, so I said, Rabbi Simon, could you send me the books, and when I start working, I will give you the money. So he said, fine. So he did that. So then I read, and I read, and I read, and I continued to read constantly. And while reading, I was given understanding about many things. One of those things was to pay tithes. Now, I'd never paid tithes in my life before. I knew of people who did pay tithes, but I never understood the reason why we pay tithes or who we pay tithes to. So then I realized I need to get a job to pay my tithes. And also by reading, I learned that the tithes actually belong to the Levites, and the Levites only. They don't belong to anybody else. So with that understanding, I understood that when I do work, that the money that I earn, 10% of that, I give to Rabbi Simon Altaf, because he's a Levite. So do you understand? This is understanding, this is wisdom. So with that, I asked Rabbi Simon to ask Hashem to help me find a job. 2 weeks later, I was training, working with a tetraplegic. I've never actually worked with anybody who was paralyzed from the neck down, but 2 weeks later I was working, Baruch Hashem. So I continued to learn and study. Now, the formula, this is the formula. Once you come back to the understanding that Torah is the key, well, in a sense, Torah is the foundation to enter the kingdom. So therefore you have to be doing what God has commanded you in the Torah in order to enter the kingdom. Because obviously the kingdom's going to have laws, and God has told us what those laws are. All the laws are in the first 5 books of Moses. So until you go back and read from the first 5 books of Moses, you will not have an understanding of what God is requiring of you. Unless you are fortunate to have a teacher, a pastor, a preacher who's actually teaching you the commandments, then obviously you have some understanding. So the first thing we need to do with the formula, to have the formula, is to repent and return back to the Torah, to start keeping the commandments. That's the first thing. To renounce all other religions and to come back to the Torah. Remember, the Torah is not a religion, it's just a way of life. God has given us commandments, things to do, things not to do, things to eat, things not to eat, so on and so forth. To keep the Sabbath, to obey his holy feasts. These are the things that God has given us instruction on what to do and how to live. So the first thing we do, we repent, we ask God for forgiveness, and we return back to the Torah. Then the next thing we would do, we would start keeping the Sabbath. As God said, Remember the Shabbat day, to keep it holy, set apart. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a set apart day to Yahweh your power. In it you shall do no work. It's a holy day. In it you shall do no work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your sheep, nor your cattle. For Yahweh has set the 7th day as a set apart day, as a holy day, and consecrated it as a memorial to the work done in the beginning of creation. Okay, so there you have it. God is telling you unequivocally to keep my Sabbath, not to work on the Sabbath. Okay, so you start keeping the Sabbath. Then what you have to do, you have to understand that you've been living in transgression, basically. So therefore you need to make amendments for those transgressions. So therefore, and this is why you have to understand that the key to the formula is the Levite, Rabbi Simon Altaf. Because without the key, the formula is useless. You need the key. You need a Levite to give your offerings to. This is why God has sent the Levite ahead of us and ahead of me as well, also. So I can learn from the Levite first and foremost. Then I can give instruction to those who are seeking the kingdom. So without the key, the formula is useless. So when I understood from Rabbi Simon that I need to make an offering for the transgressions that I'd done in the past, I did that. I made an offering. And I gave it to Rabbi Simon. And he gave me a bracha, a blessing. Then I learned that I had to make an offering for sins I'd done in ignorance. All the things that you've done and you found out later it was a transgression, but not realizing it at the time, you have to make an offering. So I did that too. I made an offering to Rabbi Simon, gave him the money, sent him the money, and he gave me a bracha, a blessing. Okay. Then I started to keep the holy feasts. Now Yahweh tells us, do not come empty-handed on my feast days. So every feast day we have to bring an offering. And who do we bring the offering to? We bring it to the Levite. Because that is the person that Yahweh has put in place for us to return back to these paths. There has to be a Levite in place in order for us to put these things in place and to repair the breach. This is what we're doing. By doing these things now, we are repairing the breach. If you don't repair the breach, how can you be expected to be in the kingdom? So, every feast day, I would give my offering to Rabbi Simon, and he would give me a bracha, a blessing. So all these things, I was doing. Then later on, I realized I had to be circumcised. In order to be in the covenant, one has to obviously circumcise in heart and in flesh. So when I realized this, I also decided that, it was time for me also to be circumcised. So I saved the money and I got circumcised. So that's another thing I did, which is required in the Torah. Now with all these things that I put in place, it was only after, and obviously continuing the study of Torah, also that's key as well, and learning more about the oral Torah, which is from the Siddur. We have to learn about the feasts, we have to learn about the Sabbath, all of these things. So it's a constant, it's repetition. These things you need to be doing over and over and over again. I mean, this is why, our ancestors were in the wilderness for 40 years, because, they had to learn these things coming out of Egypt. And this is where we are now today. This is like a dress rehearsal for us. So we have to continue learning these things constantly. We have to continue paying our tithes, we have to continue keeping the feast and giving offerings on the feast days. Remember, God said, do not come to my feast empty-handed. So all of these things I did as Rabbi Simon told me to do. And I didn't, argue with him. I didn't question him. I didn't, say to myself, why am I giving my money to this guy? I don't know this guy. I've only just met him, and yet he's saying, he requires 10%. I didn't have to question those things because I knew these things had to be done, regardless of whether I knew the man or not. I just knew these things had to be done. So if he's the man I'm going to give them to, who Abba Yahweh sent me to learn his Torah, then so be it. I didn't have time to question it. I just wanted to be in the kingdom. So with that said, after I'd done all of these things, put these things in place. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention was redeeming the firstborn sons. That's another key thing that we must do. Our firstborn sons, obviously, must be redeemed. So therefore we make an offering, again, to the Levite, Rabbi Simon Altaf, for the firstborn son. So my son wasn't redeemed, so I had to redeem my son. But I also realized that my grandfather wasn't redeemed, more than likely. My father wasn't redeemed, more than likely. And my older brother wasn't redeemed. So I paid for all of those as well to be redeemed. This is how deep Torah is. Because if you know you can help your family members, then you're going to help. And this is what I understood. I can help my family members for the future time when they will be raised. Because I've redeemed them back to Yahweh. So let's go back. Everything I've done now, everything that Rabbi Simon has asked me to do, I haven't questioned. I've just done it. Straight off. So after I'd done all of these things, it was then that the Most High, Abba Yahweh, spoke to me and said, Jeremy, teach them this truth. So here I am now, telling you and giving you understanding and wisdom that in order for you to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to be doing these things. This is what it means to repair the breach. If we don't repair the breach, then we can't enter the kingdom. Jeremiah says, look back to the ancient paths, where the good way is. What is the good way? The good way is Torah. It's keeping the commandments. These are the commandments. Seek intently. Walk in it. What does it mean to walk in it? To do it. To do these things. To have the key. To have the Levite. To give him the offerings. Walk in it. Do it. This is what it means. There you will find rest and comfort for your souls. So if you're not doing these things, how can you expect to enter the kingdom? So by God speaking to me, after I'd done these things, that confirms that Rabbi Simon is the Levite. If you can see it, if you have an ear, you can hear it. I was following this man. I did everything he told me to do. Everything. Without question. And it was only after that time that God spoke to me. Once I'd done all of these things. He is the key. Without the key, the formula is useless. So you must come back to these things. You must start doing these things. You must pay your tithes. Pay your Zedekah, which is an extra offering. It's justice. We have to come back with justice. So we pay a little extra on top of our tithes. You have to redeem your firstborn sons. If you want them to be in the kingdom, They might not make it the first time around, but the second resurrection, they will be given a chance. But you should be redeeming them. Coming to the offerings, or the feast, with your offerings. Every feast day, Abba says, do not come to my feast days empty-handed. So therefore you need the key. You need Rabbi Simon Eltaf to give him your offerings. And you're saying to Hashem, Heavenly Father, here's my offering. I've given it to you, Rabbi Simon, your Levite priest that you've sent. This is confirmation that you are keeping Torah. You have to get circumcised. Unfortunately for many, I know, this is a stumbling block. Many of you do not want to do the deed in the sense that maybe you're afraid of, somebody else touching your member or whatever, But regardless, it has to be done. Maybe you're afraid of blood, I don't know. Whatever it is, these things have to be done. You have to overcome them. You have to. You have to overcome these things. And you have to overcome the fact that, you said to yourself that Rabbi Simon is not a Levite. I've got confirmation from the Most High, from Abba Yahweh. After I'd done these things, the Abba spoke to me and said, Jeremy, teach them this truth. So what's coming out of my mouth now is truth. I'm telling you, you need to do these things in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. And don't forget, only a remnant shall return. So why only a remnant? Maybe it's because the rest of you have rebelled. Maybe you rebelled against the key, Rabbi Simon Eltaf. Maybe you said to yourselves, how can he be the key? He's not black. He's not black enough. He's from Pakistan. He doesn't speak like me. He doesn't dress like me. Why is he the key? Why is he the one that Yahweh has sent to teach us? Well, you have to search your heart and your soul, as I have. And it didn't take me long. So if you can overcome this stumbling block also, and ask Rabbi Simon, or ask Abba Yahweh first for forgiveness, and then ask Rabbi Simon for forgiveness. Come back to the Kohen, come back to the Levite, and start paying your tithes, your Zedekah. Start giving your feast offerings. Redeem your firstborn sons. Get circumcised. Study Torah. Walk humbly. If you can do these things, then you will enter, without a doubt. If you can let go of your fears and your doubts and put your trust in Yahweh. If I'm telling you now that Rabbi Simon is the Levite, the one that Abba Yahweh has chosen to teach you, to bring you back to true understanding of how we, as B'nai Israel, genetic Israel, need to be living right now in 2018, then trust me on this. Rabbi Simon is the man. Hashem has shown me. He's shown me so many things. He's given me so many visions, I haven't even spoken about. Maybe I will sometime in the future. But right now, you have to understand, unless you're keeping these commandments, unless you're doing these things repeatedly, on a regular basis, year after year, until the Father gathers us, then you won't enter. And the only place left, I'm afraid to say, is Sheol. Because you've rebelled. And what does the Father say about those who rebel? He tells us, I will take you from the place where you sojourn, and I will bring you to the land, and you will not be able to enter, and you will know that I am Yahweh. So I say to you now, it's time to think deeply about where you want to be. Because Sheol is not a nice place. I've been there. The Father's taken me there. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 times I've been to Sheol. The first time was in the late 80s when I saw my own travail of my soul. The Father took me down there so I could have a taste, to know that Sheol existed. It is a real place. The second time the Father took me was not too long ago. My mother died recently. The Abba took me there also to see my own mother's torture, which I witnessed and I had to see. In order for me to speak about it to you, I had to witness it firsthand. And the third time, I also went to Sheol to see how the souls were kept. Because I asked Abba, I said, Abba, how were the souls kept in Sheol? And he took me there again and showed me. So all of these things about Sheol I will speak about. I will show you and I will tell you what will befall you if you do not return back to these commandments, if you do not embrace the key, the Levite, Rabbi Simon Altaf. Then you have no kingdom. You do not have the middle pillar, which is Yahweh and the kingdom and Messiah. You won't have it because you've rebelled. The whole point of us being here now in the nations is to give us the chance to do these things, to do them correctly, to get things right, to understand that we have a Levite in front of us who's going to teach us the right way. I mean, the Father has given me the understanding that I'm from Judah, from the tribe of Judah. So if Judah holds the scepter, then Judah also must teach. And as the Father instructed me and commanded me, Jeremy, teach them this truth. So therefore I must teach you. The time has come now for me to speak and to defend Rabbi Simon. He is the Levite. He is the one that the Most High has chosen. I mean, God never sent out a consensus when he decided to pick Musa to take leadership over Israel. I didn't hear anywhere in the Torah that God said, yeah, Israel, I'm about to pick Musa to be your leader. How do you feel about that? Can I have your decisions by tomorrow morning? No, it didn't happen that way. God picked Moses himself. There was nobody else to debate the issue. So if God has chosen Rabbi Simon, God has chosen Rabbi Simon. If you reject Rabbi Simon, you rejected God's teacher. So, you should think about these things now. Don't let this be a stumbling block for you. As God has, shown me, do these things and you will enter. I have the kingdom. God has already shown me to be in the kingdom. I know that might be hard for some of you to understand, but because if you keep these commandments and if you do the things that I've told you to do, if you keep the formula and continue to do the formula, you will understand that you will be in the middle pillar and you will have Messiah. That's the only way you're going to have Messiah. That's the only way you're going to be in the kingdom. So, it's time to get wisdom and get understanding and do these things. I thank you for listening. Baruch Shem Kivod Malkuto Leolam Va'ed. Benevolent be the name of his esteemed kingdom, forever and ever and ever. This is Rabbi Jeremy Beaton saying thank you for watching. And I'll see you on the other side. Thank you. Shalom, shalom.